Honestly, there's not much in life that I love more than early 80s slashers. It was the Wild West, and these slashers were the fresh, hot thing, so every studio exec and their mother tried to capitalize on the genre's success. At the beginning of the decade, these films never lost money. The genre was new, and because of that, not every trope was fully fleshed out yet or cemented. Sure, Halloween in '78 set the standard for what a slasher could and should be, but it wasn't until Friday the 13th in 1980 that the formula became replicable. And by 1981, studios, and basically anyone with a camera, would follow the formula Friday the 13th established, with less and less deviation as the years progressed. Now, I've been on record multiple times saying that 1981 is the best year in horror movie history. But if you're not buying that, then we can at least agree that 1981 has some of the best and most impactful slashers. The sheer volume of quality is outstanding. We have The Burning, The Prowler, My Bloody Valentine, Just Before Dawn, Graduation Day, Friday the 13th Part 2, Halloween 2, Final Exam, and Happy Birthday to Me. The one thing that makes all these slashers special and unique, even though on paper they seem to have roughly the same formulaic outline, is that in 1981, the genre was still new enough, so you have certain tropes that may show up, but they aren't done in a way that seems robotic. That's why slashers fell out of favor with audiences as the 80s progressed. The genre stagnated and there wasn't enough new blood being pumped into it, with the exception of some movies like A Nightmare on Elm Street in 1984. The genre just became hollow and by the books. 81 is the Goldilocks zone, where you have enough tropes to make it feel familiar, but enough soul, experimentation, and possibly lack of polish that make these slashers feel unique and special all these years later. There's a reason why horror fans hold these slashers in a higher regard, and why throughout the 80s we get fewer and fewer examples of great slashers. And that leads us to 1981's Delusion, also known as The House Where Death Lives. And even though I thought I reviewed every 1981 horror movie known to man, more and more of these films keep coming to my attention. Delusion is surprising. In many ways, it has the same tropes found in early 80s slashers, but it feels old school, classic. While most of the slashers at the time tried to appeal to a teen audience, Delusion feels like it was aimed towards adults. It's deliberate with its execution and scares, and because of this, Delusion shook me down to my core. What can I possibly mean by that? Well, let's get into the review and find out. Welcome to the Hellbound Horror Show. Delusion opens with our lead, Meredith, writing a letter to her father. This letter acts as a narration that is used throughout this whole movie. Through the narration, we find out quite a bit about our lead, Meredith. She's been distant from her father for many years, but is finally reaching out. Her mother, who was in the hospital Meredith now works at, has just passed away. So Meredith's writing this letter to her estranged father to let him know of her mother's passing. Since she hasn't talked to him in decades, she needs to tell the story of her first job, one where she was a live-in nurse taking care of an elderly millionaire named Mr. Langrock. She also had to take care of Langrock's grandson, who she thought would be just a little boy. But we'll get into that debacle later. First, we need to flash back to the beginning of her first job. While driving to her new job as a live-in nurse, we get a colorful conversation from the cab driver.
Guy, look at him. He wants to be a cop when he grows up. This is making his day. He'll cause 2 or 3 accidents by himself if you give him the opportunity.
And we see a truck accident with blankets over some little kids in the middle of the street. Those sure are some sleepy little kids. Once we get to the house, we meet Philip, one of the house workers. He shows Meredith around, first to the employer, Mr. Langrock. He's a grouchy old fellow, but has a charm to him. His legs no longer work, and he and Meredith are about to really get to know each other. Mr. Langrock had 2 sons, both of whom died. He never really knew one of his sons. Foreshadowing much? Instead, he hopes to get to know his grandson, who will be arriving in just a few days. We meet the other house members, and holy crap, is that Large Marge?
It looked like this.
Sick! As Philip shows Meredith around, they go to the wine cellar. Meredith doesn't drink, but the same can't be said for Philip.
Oh, no thanks, I never drink.
It's quite the opposite with me, I'm afraid.
He used to have a super refined palate.
Palate's gone, I suppose, but not the desire.
Oh, he might have a problem.
Empty. All around. Empty.
I like Philip. When moving into her room, Meredith points out the room next to hers. When she pulled in earlier, she saw someone in the window, but Philip says the room is locked and there's no one in there. Yeah, that's not sus at all. Later that night, we meet Mr. Langrock's attorney, Jeffrey Fraser, who wants to meet Meredith before going to the opera with his girlfriend. Jeffrey clearly likes Meredith, but his girlfriend has to keep reminding him that he's not single.
He was flirting with me right in front of his girlfriend.
Darling, we're late.
Again, Meredith asks about the room next to hers, and Jeffrey tells her to ask Mr. Langrock.
Why don't you just ask Mr. Langrock? He should tell you.
Meredith continues to hear sounds in the room next to hers, and oddly enough, it isn't locked. When walking in, we get some seriously creepy atmosphere with great shot blocking and stellar lighting. And from the shadows...
Hello?
Jump scare. Who is this crazy man? None other than Mr. Langrock's son, Wilfred. But I thought he was dead. Now, if I was Meredith, I'd get the heck out of there, but through narration, we find out that she adjusted to the shock well and that she was understanding of it. Weird. Wilfred apparently went crazy, and I guess they just kept him locked up and told the world that he was dead. That's not sus at all. The house prepares for Gabriel, the grandson. Langrock explains that Gabriel and his parents were hiking one day, and then he saw both of them fall to their death. Again, that's not sus at all. And when we meet Gabriel, he's a 16-year-old man-child who doesn't know the fancy life. He's a bit creepy, likes to watch people through the windows, and he sneaks into Wilfred's room alone to talk to him. There's also a dog, and sorry, Steve, but the dog goes missing. Is Gabriel at fault? And yeah, we see what happens to this dog, and it unfortunately looks real. It honestly made my stomach turn. Poor puppy. Langrock and Meredith form a close connection, and it seems like these two are the only sane ones in the house. Through conversation, we find out that Meredith's mother has gone mentally ill over the years, and that her father is an alcoholic. When Meredith was just 12 years old, she watched her drunken father force himself onto her mother. Since then, she hasn't talked to her father, and her mother went insane. Langrock wants Meredith's mother to move into the house with all of them, but after some sleuthing, they find out that the records of Meredith's mother at the hospital were apparently misplaced by the hospital staff. We get this weird love triangle. Jeffrey likes Meredith, and she enjoys being wanted, but the most messed up part of this love triangle is that Meredith has the hots for Gabriel. She doesn't act on it, but let me remind you, he's 16 years old. Maybe everyone in this house is crazy after all. My goodness. The members of the house slowly get picked off one by an unknown assailant. The mystery will keep you guessing until the final minutes, and you won't believe who is behind the murders in the house where death lives. This one shook me down to my core. Not because of like spooks or originality or anything, but just because I was pleasantly surprised the whole time. Yes, Delusion is deliberately slow, methodical, and lacks many elements that make slasher films amazing. But what Delusion does deliver is tense atmosphere, stellar performances, a surprisingly tight script, and the perfect amount of ick that will crawl under your skin for days. Delusion doesn't feel like an early 80s slasher, it feels older, it feels more mature in a way. Narration makes it feel very dated too. The creepy house, dark past, and a slow grind are a staple of 70s cinema, and in a way, this feels as if it was made during that time with a slasher twist. And there's actually a reason for this. Delusion started filming in 1979 under the title Trauma. For whatever reason, it was pushed back and not released until 1981. So the 70s influences make a lot more sense. No wonder why the slasher elements feel closer to proto-slashers of the 70s compared to the refined tropes of post-Friday the 13th. Delusion feels closer to Psycho and Black Christmas than it does to My Bloody Valentine or The Burning. There's a stronger giallo presence. Atmosphere reigns supreme over gore and senseless TNA. Yeah, there's still TNA, but it's not used to please or arouse like it is in 80s slashers. It's not flashy. Instead, the TNA here is uncomfortable and puts the audience in an uneasy and vulnerable situation. Cinematography is good, however, it doesn't do much to push the film to the next level. It's very competent, but safe. Direction is also very safe. This was the cinematographer and director's first feature film, but it doesn't feel like it. Delusion relies on its solid script and shockingly great acting. This was a low-budget affair, so the fact that we have some believable and noteworthy performances is wonderful. Without decent acting, this movie would probably flop so hard. Speaking of acting, Gabriel was played by John Dukakis, whose father is Michael Dukakis, who ran for president in 1988. Crazy.
No, you don't think that, do you?
Do you?
And while I love Delusion, I'm not a fan of its title. I prefer The House Where Death Lives. Delusion as a title lets the audience know that something is amiss and not everyone can be trusted. It puts the audience on guard right away and kind of ruins the surprise a bit. It reminds me of 1961's The Innocents that was based on a story called The Turn of the Screw, and if you would have titled the movie that, you would have had people figuring out the conclusion well before the film wrapped up. The title The House Where Death Lives is also a bit misleading, as there aren't a lot of malice shenanigans going on, but I feel like it's a vague enough title to make it an enjoyable watch. Delusion is an underrated early 80s slasher for sure. It's not a masterpiece by any means, but it's one of my favorite hidden gems from 1981. Vinegar Syndrome released it in 2024, and it's a must purchase. The transfer is phenomenal, and the film never looked better. There are some special features and decent interviews, but nothing to really write home about. Yeah, the special features are a little middling on this kind of release, but the main draw is the film itself, and I highly recommend The House Where Death Lives, especially if it ever goes on sale. You'll be delusional if you miss out on this one. That's all I have for tonight. So thank you so much for watching, and stay spooky, everyone. Thank you for watching until the end. If you like this video, feel free to like it. And if you like this kind of content, feel free to subscribe. I'm releasing videos every other week. And then the next video in about 2 weeks is going to be one of my favorites. I'm looking into an unknown Italian horror director that was taken from this world far too soon. You're not going to want to miss it. It is crazy stuff. Hope to see you there, and have a good one. Thanks. Bye.